All right, we're live. Now, I hope people watch. It doesn't matter if somebody watches now. We've actually gotten some people that are live or that have watched us on the YouTube because I put it on my YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So people are still watching it on the YouTube.
Okay.
And next month we were saying that we should do what do we say, like the things that people are doing wrong, kind of like your
maybe real estate class with Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Of course, we will have to limit it to an hour. We won't have to worry about getting an hour. We'll have to worry about limiting
Right, exactly.
it.
Exactly right. Because I've actually asked to do those in video form, like some that could be used for like having a communication with your client. Like if somebody's like, I don't want to do due diligence or I don't understand due diligence, like me recording that sort of thing where they can just say, watch this video.
That's actually part of what I've got some already, so I'll show them to you. I'm doing that.
Hey, there we are.
There we are. Yay.
Why did I not get it come up?
Because you're still watching that video.
I went to your own ad, so I'm going to get there. Let's see.
So I'm going to go to my page. There I am.
And then just what happens now?
Go to my page. You're not on my page. Click it.
Okay.
And then
Okay. Should just come up.
scroll.
There
There we are.
There we are.
And now you can share it.
All right. So let's share that.
It's Teresa and Carmika and Tiffany. It's a party. Hey, it's a party. Hey.
All right. Now where can the comments be seen? I follow those.
I can see I can't see the comments. Hey, Tiffany, will you tell us if you can hear us and put a comment in so we can read it? I think there's a delay. I don't know.
There's a little bit.
There's a little bit of a delay. Somebody needs to comment something.
I could hear someone.
Oh, you can? Okay.
I could.
But
there
now
is a
somebody's
delay.
got a
Okay.
comment. So
My lips aren't moving yet.
Hey, there's a like.
we have lots of likes. Yay, thanks, Tiff.
Where's the guy?
Mhm.
Okay. See, it's this is what I said a while ago. Yeah. So it's about a 10-second delay. Interesting.
Okay, you might have been right about which side people are sitting on.
See,
You know, I hate it when you're right and I'm not. I really hate that.
we get that a lot.
Sometimes I'm right, but when
When
I'm
you
not
agree-
right, it's because
when you
one of
agree
you are
with
right.
me.
I
Mhm.
generally assume that Barnett is right.
Hey,
Oh,
please
that's
tell
a-
him that sometimes I
that's
am
a-
right too.
Well, that's only because I've consulted you first before I talked to Chris.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's where my rightness comes from.
Guess what, guys? Guess what time it
It's
is?
11 o'clock. You better
It's
start getting
11
some stuff
o'clock.
now.
Hey, everybody. Say hi.
Good morning. Good morning.
So we're here for our second webinar. So excited. So glad you all are here with us. And today we're talking about iBuyers. So the first thing I want to start off and say is that we are not going to be saying iBuying is good. We're not going to be saying iBuying is bad. We just really want to educate people on iBuyers because they are not going away. Right?
Here.
So I'm not going to sit here and bash iBuyers or say, yeah, they're the best thing ever. We just want to be truthful and say that we don't know everything by far. So if you have questions, definitely put them out there. We'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. So do we need to do introductions again, or do they know us?
They know us, but
Well, we may have a new
yeah,
audience.
All right.
I'm Chris Mann, closing attorney in Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill.
Best attorney ever.
Or an attorney extraordinaire.
Mhm,
The firm is Mann, McGivney, and Jordan, and you probably have worked with us
Or been to a party.
or know somebody who has if you're watching this video.
Mhm.
I'm Chris Barnett, real estate instructor, investor, etc. And also getting ready to start CE season. So hopefully I'll get to see a lot of you then.
Best
That was-
instructor ever.
Why, thank you.
Well, damn.
Whoa!
All right. Best instructors ever.
Whoa!
What do you say to start
Yeah, I just completely.
That's going to cost you
So
thanks for lunch.
at the next one of these, there will be a different attorney sitting here. Almost
with? You
guaranteed.
think that attorneys are careful about what they say. Of course, you would also think attorneys would be careful where they mark, and that's apparently not the case either. So.
And I am Candace, and I am instructor and therapist and coach and all around perfect person. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the best instructor ever.
Good sucking up. Good sucking up.
Thank you for putting this together. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, this is so much fun. Okay, so let's get down to business. Let's start with what iBuying is. So, Chris, if you had to describe to an agent that was asking you, what is iBuying? What is an iBuyer? I just have to say, Chris Barnett, this Chris,
Yes.
what would you say?
Well, you told me I wasn't going to have to speak today. I was just here for my looks. But having said that, since you did ask me a question, an iBuyer is basically they're running an algorithm on the value of houses.
Mhm.
They're coming in as an investor. They're buying houses directly from the sellers. Their goal is to turn around and sell this, ideally at a profit, sometimes not, and we'll get into why that may or may not be an issue on the iBuyer. And what they found is they're filling that gap between a traditional buyer and the wholesaler. Okay, there was a gap there, and just like any market, someone comes in to fill it.
What's a wholesaler? Because I had somebody ask me that the
Oh,
other
okay,
day.
I'm sorry. The wholesalers are the ones that there used to be a traditional formula that if you could go out and buy a house for basically 30% off the after repair value plus repairs, you could flip that property and make a decent living by doing that. Obviously, that seller has to be somewhat distressed for one reason or the other. Could be the property, could be their situation. But the wholesalers, obviously, that is a very select property. But what the iBuyers have done, because they're willing to accept smaller margins, they've been able to, that's the gap that it has created.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the wholesalers are basically the we buy ugly houses.
Mhm.
Yeah, there you go.
And there's a big difference. When I think of flipping, after doing this research, flippers are definitely trying to find houses that are in bad shape, fixing it up, and then doing it. Whereas our iBuyers are just really trying to get it at a lower price, putting a little lipstick on the pig, and then selling it.
That's a good point.
Right? So, I mean, it's good. It can be good. It can be really good, and it can definitely help out people. So, who are the iBuyer players? In fact, being the attorney and seeing lots of closings, who have you seen in our triangle market?
So I think most everybody is here in our market just because our market is one of the best markets in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So Open Door is the biggest one in our market. By far, they're the biggest one. Zillow is coming on fast. Zillow is like new to the market, new to what they're doing, at least as far as an iBuyer, but they have the built-in benefit of their website, so they don't have to do all the advertising that Open Door has to do. All they literally have to do is just add a little button on their website that says "Sell your house." So they have that benefit, and they're growing up pretty quick. OfferPad, we see a bit here. We don't see them as much as you see the Zillow or the Open Door, but we see them some. Knock, which is a different spin on it. Knock is different than Open Door and OfferPad and Zillow in the way that they do it. We see them some, but
How about Ribbon?
I don't see Ribbon at all.
You don't see
I
Ribbon?
don't see Ribbon at all.
Okay.
I mean, they may be in this market, but it may not be as much.
I did pull some numbers off of Broker Metrics. And if you don't know what Broker Metrics is, it's just a company that takes MLS data and makes it so you can understand it. And according to what I pulled on the 16th, Open Door has 1.3% of our market share already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, nationally, if you look at the national numbers, most of the people are saying, hey, the iBuyers are doing 0.2%, 0.2%. And in our market, just Open Door has, 1.3%. So when you add in a little bit of OfferPad, a little bit of Zillow, a little bit of Redfin, all of that, that's pretty awesome for them. And I think we're going to start to reflect what Phoenix has done. So if you're not aware, Phoenix is where a lot of the iBuying began. And in that market, they have about 5 to 6% of the market share. So I think we're going to start to reflect that.
Well, and I think it's interesting. You may come up with these statistics a little bit later. When you say that number, it actually sounds like a small number, but when you compare it to market share sizes of what other companies do, I think people would be surprised. It's a little bit bigger than what it sounds, but The perception, I think, is probably that it's bigger, and the reason is because they're so prevalent in media, advertising, and such. And the interesting statistic that a large amount of sellers are talking to these people.
Oh yes, 40%,
Before,
right?
yeah, I think it was 40%.
40% in Phoenix, Arizona. 40% of the sellers
Yeah.
were going to at least one iBuyer to get a quote, to see what could I sell it for. So
Right.
we can't ignore this.
Yeah, let's not put our hands in the sand. Let's take a look and see how we can leverage this. Let's see how we can use it to our benefit, knowing that it's going to take up some part of the market.
So here's a question, Chris, and this is going to be, obviously legal. Have you had any sellers come to you and say, hey, I've got this offer. What does this mean? Like, has anybody come and said?
No, I've never actually had a seller come to me and say, I've got an offer from an iBuyer. What are my rights? They literally, for the most part, people that are doing that are just going on faith that it is what they want, it is what they're going to get.
Scale of 1 to 10, how good of an idea is that? Like,
I'm going to say that that's like on the below 2 range.
okay.
But I mean, to a point, because these companies can't grow if they end up on like Channel 11's like consumer protection section of the website or on the news. Like, they have to be relatively fair and honest, just because as soon as it starts to come out that they're being deceptive or ripping people off or whatever, that's going to hurt their market share pretty dramatically, pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But
so what's the draw for a seller?
Well, I think where Chris was going with that, and I have to actually give them a little bit of credit from this standpoint, is their processes have been fairly simple. I've looked at their contracts. I don't find them to be something that someone cannot read and interpret very quickly. And the reason for that is what they're doing is they're trading convenience for equity. Is what it amounts to. And they've in that situation, they've done a really, really good job.
You mentioned, was it yesterday, about cars? It's kind of like we're used to buying and selling cars this way.
That's right.
You said like CarMax. You go to CarMax and they say, hey, we'll give you this much for your car. You could probably get more someplace else, but the convenience of doing one-stop shopping.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So, I mean, if you're a seller, you're like, okay, here are my options. I can interview some agents, clean up my house, have people in and out of my house, maybe get an offer, maybe have to drop it, or just for that convenience fee, going ahead and saying, hey, it's sold, and now I can buy another house. So what does that fee even look like? Did you?
Well, if you want to speak to that, and then we can come in and kind of, obviously it's a moving target right now. Go ahead and start with it. And there's some things I'd like to add.
So nationally, so just in case you all had wondered, if you're really looking to dig into all of this, there's a guy named Mike Delpreet, and he's done all of this research. And then there's another guy, Kenny Kloss, was that his name? Yeah.
Yes.
Kenny Kloss has done an amazing thing too. We'll get to that later if you all need some resources. But their research has shown that most iBuyers are going to fall between the 6 and 12%. That's what it's going to cost a seller to do business with that iBuyer. Now, the 12 is going to be a little bit high. The 6 is going to be a little bit low. If I had to really kind of narrow it down, I think most of the research said be like between like 6.5% and 8-9%, because of it's not just the convenience fee. So one of the things I thought was interesting, and that I really think sellers need to understand, and agents, you all need to understand this too, is that if I'm the seller and I get this offer from an iBuyer, it's just, hey, here's what we're offering you, plus you owe us this convenience fee. What they're not doing is a complete net to seller, which is going to say, don't forget about your taxes. Don't forget about you have to pay this and your deed stuff, and things like
tax, all that stuff.
And it's not including the cost of the repairs.
Sure.
So, I mean, depending on if you're looking at it and saying, okay, well, this is going to cost me 10%, but I'm willing to pay that extra 4% because I didn't hire an agent or whatever. Did you look into the cost of repairs? Because you don't really get a choice.
Yeah. So. And on that note, I wanted to see where you were going to go with that. There's a couple of things that we won't get into it in this session, but this is where agents need to know what their scripts are. I have to give Marty a lot of credit. She runs an ad on the radio right now and says that the average cost for the iBuyer, the cost for using an iBuyer, is about $15,000. And our research has shown that this is probably not a bad number. So if I know when I'm talking to the seller that if I do the net, that you're going to lose $15,000 and they're not losing the $15,000. That's the convenience fee that they're paying. But how much time could you give me to try to market your house, sell your house for $15,000? One of the scripts I heard somebody talking about one day is, well, how long would it take you to walk home with $15,000 cash? And is it not worth 30, 45, 60 days of us marketing this house? So again, don't be scared of the iBuyers. Let's compare ourselves and our value proposition to what it is that the iBuyer offers. What's your trade-off for convenience? And that net to seller is going to be key.
So, and I'm totally going to put you on the spot for a second. Because how many closings do you do about a month? Your office?
300-ish.
When would you start? I mean, yay, that sounds like a lot of work. I mean, he does a lot. But when would you say you started to see, like the first time you saw like it? A couple of open doors or a couple of offer pads or Zillow?
So yeah, in this market, the first one, I actually know it because it was my purchase.
Oh.
And I didn't even realize it at the time. But I purchased a townhouse and for myself, and that was 2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe 2 years ago, somewhere in that range. And Open Doors, the seller, they had just bought it from somebody, and I didn't even at that point put it together, really, because they weren't really in the market at that point. It was like one of the very early things. So it's been 2.5, 3 years, 2 years.
Was it a good experience?
It was completely invisible to me buying from them.
Okay.
So as buying from them, like if you are representing a buyer who's buying an Open Door listing, we have a lot to talk about. I'm sure that's later on.
Well,
yeah. There's a whole lot that you sort of have to keep an eye on, mostly around repairs. But as far as the rest of the transaction, it's not substantially different than any other transaction if you're a buyer buying from them.
It is such a large. I mean, this is such a large topic. I didn't know when I said we should do iBuyers what we were really stepping into, but there's so many things to look at this from, because we want to first understand what an iBuyer is and how does it work. Then you've got to say, okay, what does that mean for your sellers? What does it mean for your buyers? What does it mean for us as agents? How do you work this into your business? And then what does it mean to our industry? Because what's that guy's name? His name is
Oh, you're looking for
Eric Wu.
I'm sorry.
Like I said, Eric Wu, who is the CEO of Open Door, said his goal is that he wants this whole process of sellers selling a house to be free,
Right.
absolutely free for the seller. That affects all of us. Then you, me, that's
Sort of. I mean, it sort of does, because it still ends up with them getting less. It costs them something, but they get less money for the house. But yes, if they're not paying fees, it's sort of like the free shipping on Amazon idea. Like, people can get really sucked into that. Like, what does free shipping really save us on Amazon? Not a ton, but man, it feels good.
Yeah.
And psychologically, that does matter in the market a lot.
I would think that if sellers are thinking, because somebody actually mentioned yesterday to me what was the name of that company? It's a company that is trying to avoid the MLS completely.
Oh, it's
Rex. Yes. So if you've got a seller and they don't have any agent that's really helping them, doesn't that fall on you? Are they looking more towards you all as the attorney?
They do.
And I'm assuming that's going to cost a little bit more. They need an agent.
Right. They do need an agent. Yes. Because people that don't want to pay an agent also don't want to pay us.
And again, it's when I look at this, and I've been in this market for 25 years. I can remember when we used to have books that were printed on paper. We had the MLS, and so we had value because we had the MLS. Then it went digital, and people said there will be no room for agents because once people can get it digital and then online, there'd be no need for agents. But then there was. We found the place to help in the market. Now we have this new concept coming on. Talking about them going down to a net zero cost, Ancillary services are big today. Okay, there's
Yeah.
no doubt that there are other ways to make money in real estate, but this shouldn't be scary. I mean, this is just, we have to revamp our model and figure out how we, and you'll hear me say this a lot today, how can we bring value to the transaction? And I got to be honest with you, one of the notes that I made to myself, and we may get into this a little bit later, what if instead of looking at the iBuyers as a threat, if we looked at it from the standpoint, we never have to deal with another contingent sale again?
I suggested an iBuyer to an agent on Monday or Tuesday. So, and with her permission, she said I could say this, but she has a seller, or a buyer, I should say, that's here. They are out of town. They want to buy here.
Yeah.
Their house is available for sale in a different market that is flattened.
Yeah.
So they couldn't buy here. And in fact, their realtor in that other market told them, oh, your house isn't going to sell till 2021. First of all, I'm gonna need you to get a realtor. But I mean, that's insane. And so they were
setting the bar low, setting the bar real low.
But I mean, then that buyer who wanted to buy here was like, I'm gonna have to rent. And I was like, no, this is exactly what we have an iBuyer for. If they are willing to take that loss, sell that house to that iBuyer so they have the cash so that they can buy this house that they want here. So to me, it's perfect.
This is a conversation we've had for years with people. When you buy your dream home, what is the convenience factor to get rid of your old home?
Yeah.
And if there is a dollar value that can be attached to that and the iBuyer can fill it, then it makes the transaction more simple if we learn how to leverage it.
So just to kind of go backwards, because I know we had some people join a little bit later. When we're talking about iBuyers, I'm now noticing there's a little acronym. It's ZOO. So if you see people talking about ZOO, Zillow, Open Door, OfferPad. Then of course you've got your Knock, your Ribbon, Redfin. And I think the big thing to know is that Knock and Ribbon are significantly different than the other iBuyers. So where most of the iBuyers are coming in because they have all these investors and things like that, they're willing to buy these houses at a lower amount and then they're going to turn around and sell them. Whereas Knock and Ribbon says, okay, we're going to help you get the house of your dreams. You identify the house and we'll buy it. And then once we buy it, you can move in, you can rent it. And then when you sell your house, we'll get our money back or something like that. Now, let me just say, if you're with any of these companies and you want to add in, please do. Because I'm not an expert, but we do need to understand it's not just one blanket. This is how it works.
Right, but what you're doing is you're starting a conversation about this is the agent's tool belt. Okay, how can we use this? How can we leverage this? And it'll be incumbent upon us to know how to use these things. And think about it today. If I could get an interview with a seller, what I can offer him anywhere from full service to sell it immediately if we have the resources to be able to reach out to them.
I saw that Chad had mentioned.
Yeah, he had a good example.
Hi, Chad. First of all, he said had a client sold to Open Door and was offered $275, but after the 7.5% fee and repairs, they walked away with a net of $242. Wow.
Yeah, we start looking at a stretch of $30,000 there, and obviously, I want to talk to that person about the efficiencies that we could potentially build in.
What did you? I mean, I know I did a lot of research, but what did you find most striking about when you started to learn about this? Like, what fact were you just like?
So I actually didn't know that as an agent, you can just go ahead and refer your client to Open Door. Maybe Zillow does this, maybe they don't. I don't know.
Zillow doesn't pay a fee.
But if you refer somebody to Open Door as an agent, they will pay you 1%. Now, if you do it in a different order, where you sign the agency agreement and then you go get the offer from Open Door, they will not, which is super weird. They make the seller just pay you a normal commission. But if you don't necessarily sign that buyer or seller agency agreement, listing agreement, and just say, here's Open Door, at least go get an offer before you talk to me, and they put your information in, you get that referral fee. So it's something you can offer somebody in a listing agreement. Hey, we can go look at this, we can check this out, and at least we know the baseline. And if Open Door comes back to us with a number that I know that we can't get, because it's basically just a really fancy estimate. That's what Open Door is doing.
Mhm.
It's an algorithm. It's a really fancy and probably slightly better estimate, and it's not always right. So you can tell that client, hey, go get the Open Door quote or Zillow quote or whatever, and if you get it back and you say, listen, this isn't actually a really fair offer, reasonable offer, and I think that if it's something that you want to do, you can do it. You can still get a referral fee. And then if not, then you guys at least have with your client a baseline. If we put it on the market and you need to sell it in 3 weeks and we don't get the offers we want, go back to the door. You're providing options and a service to your client at that point.
Right. This. Do you remember how to spell Kenny Klaus's last name? Was it Klaus? Okay.
Yes.
On that note, Chris, he actually brought up a word that he talked about being a fiduciary. And if I come in and I'm your listing agent, my obligation is to bring you all offers. Well, if these guys are making offers,
right,
and that's a legitimate source of it, then technically I'm doing my job by bringing them to you. So there is a way that we can work together in a win-win on this. Like, and you know what? Worst case scenario, hopefully your relationship is good enough that if the iBuyer does buy the house, the buyer they're now a buyer who needs to buy a house.
And they're still in your sphere. And they are still
that's right,
part of your business.
Right.
Yeah. And you can create a lot of goodwill, I think, as a salesperson, which we are, by saying, listen, I am willing to take less money or no money to get you what you need in this scenario. And that person now will trust you.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Keeping that client for life.
Yeah. Let them know their options. Exactly. Yep.
What surprised you about all of this?
I want to go off base a little bit. And the thing that, and it didn't surprise me. I know that surprises you, but I'm going on.
You're going on base?
It didn't surprise me, but it's just something we need to be aware of with the new economy. And that is the fact that none of these companies have ever made any money.
Yeah.
How are you gonna steal my idea? What I was.
I'm sorry. We can come back and talk about that a little bit. But the fact of the matter is we're dealing with business models that don't make money traditionally. Open Door is, they make some mistakes. Sometimes they buy, sometimes they hold longer than they want to. They sell for less than what they did. But because of the ancillary services, because of the volume, and because that they have a fat wad of venture capital, they have the ability to, what was the word that they used? In the,
sustained unprofitability.
Yeah.
And I love that term. Love it, love it, love it. Because if you look at this, I mean, of course, I love looking at this from an agent point of view, but you look at it from just the economy, you have all of these companies that have all of this cash, and this is just people pouring money into it, assuming that it's going to work. And they don't take a profit. The house, not on the house. The houses are a loss leader.
Yeah.
So basically, I think, what's it? Mike Del Crete said for every dollar they're bringing in, it was Open Door, it is costing them $1.40. Those houses are actually costing them money, but Zillow, Open Door, I mean, all these large companies, they don't care about the house. They care about the fact that, oh, now we have an insurance company. Now we have a mortgage company. We have all these fees. And if you're Zillow, for better or for worse, Zillow has everything because that's where everybody goes first. They are literally getting the leads. They have the people. Even if they don't buy all of the houses that they put offers on, they have all of those contacts and people that are just, I don't know. It's how do you go up against a company whose goal is not to make money?
Right.
I don't know.
Amazon didn't make money for maybe going on a decade.
Yeah.
And they didn't care. It's all about getting market share. And at some point they will try to change the algorithm a bit and make money on houses, but that's not necessarily the point right now.
Yeah.
It's for Zillow, it's the leads. I mean, and I don't want to go down that path because that's a whole different conversation, but they literally, most people start their offer at the whole process, buying or selling at Zillow. And now all of a sudden they're saying, okay, we'll buy your house if you're trying to sell. And we have to do something. I mean, like you have to get in front of this. You have to as an agent.
Yeah, part of me on the agent side of it says I don't want to feed the beast, but you can't ignore the beast. Right. I mean, how can we work within this to leverage it for the best part of our business? And, part of my training coming up was always the fact that they're not doing anything we couldn't do. Even Matt Perry and I talk about this a lot of times, that every property that we go into, our first question should be, is this a property we would buy as an agent? Do I have a list of investors who would buy this? And so again, just exposing the clients to all the possible avenues. Hey, if you can fill it, if you have that in your tool belt, you're going to be a better agent.
I'm just looking at these comments. It is a zoo indeed. Hi, Soraya. Mantha said, I got a text from an open door agent about one of my listings saying they had a buyer client that wanted to put an offer on my listing. Is Open Door working the buy side too? And what do I know about this? I do believe they are. I didn't. That's a great question, Sam. And one of the things I discovered in preparing for this is we have to have more conversations. So I was thinking, Chris Mann.
Oh gosh, what's about to happen?
I was thinking that you could sponsor like a lunch and learn, or not even like a lunch and learn, because I mean I want to share ideas, but could we get together and talk about as a group what this looks like, not just from information, like what are you experiencing? What are you seeing?
I like how she gets me on camera and it's like, hey, Chris, let's spend your money. Yeah, I mean, we could do that. I think that's something that we could do with like multi-agency, we'd have to find a space.
I will do that part.
Different thing altogether. But yes, like I think this is something we could do. And whether it's, like moderated led or something like that, or if it's like just get in a room and let's like talk about experiences we've had and what we know.
Yeah, because Sam, I don't know the answer to your question,
Well,
and
there's no doubt that they are going into that space, and it's going to involve offering buyers discounts. I mean, there's no doubt that that's where they're going. Zillow will get somewhat in that space, but they are always tied to the leads. How valuable are the leads if we can wrap people around? But anyway, yes, I think
I'm buying lunch is basically what I got out of this.
Yes.
I'm buying.
Okay.
He's buying lunch.
where's the
You're
sign
welcome,
up?
everybody.
Yeah.
Also, Ruth Chris is what we were thinking.
I'm buying a different lunch.
Fine, then I suppose not. All right. So, were there any other comments? No. Sorry. Okay. I don't know. Gosh, there's so much. I don't even know where to go from this point. I'm like,
Go somewhere and we'll start a conversation around it. Or
So I will say that if you are representing a buyer, we'll just kind of go in that direction.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're representing a buyer who's buying an open door listing, first thing that's going to happen is when you put in that offer, if they say we'll accept it, but it'll say we'll accept it, but you have to use our closing attorney. That is, and this is a little bit of self-interest here, but you don't have to do that. Like legitimately, all you have to do is say no to that. We'll buy it, but we're using our attorney, and Open Door will say okay in almost every scenario, unless it's an attorney they worked with here that they just hate for some reason.
So what I hear you saying is, let's look at it from, you're an agent, you have a buyer, the buyer wants to buy one of these houses that these iBuyers have purchased.
They already own.
And one of the big things you need to, if they say, hey, yes, we'll take your offer, but only if you use our attorney,
Right.
You're saying that's not a thing.
It's not.
It doesn't
all you
have
have
to
to do
be
is
a
say
thing.
no. Just say
Okay.
no. And they may push back once, but they won't push back twice. By the second time you say no, we're using our attorney, they'll just say okay. And because we do probably 2 or 3 open door closings with Open Door as the seller, 2 or 3 a week, maybe more.
Okay.
So I mean, it's a lot. So
Same contract, same OTP.
Same OTP, like it's all the same stuff. And we're happy to do that. And most other attorneys are happy to
Are there any addenda or anything that we need to
there is
know?
an addenda that comes with it. And it's only scary in the sense that it's not a part of the standard OTP.
Okay.
But once you read it, there's nothing really in that addenda that is going to that should scare off your buyer clients.
So
I'm happy to talk to them about it when they get it, but there's nothing in it that's like dramatically altering the terms of our North Carolina contract.
So maybe during this lunch from Ruth Chris that you're sponsoring,
We can put it up on the big screen.
we can put it up and just have people take a look at it. So it's not the first time you as an agent are looking at that addendum.
That's
Okay.
right.
What else? If I'm a buyer's agent trying to help a buyer buy a house that one of these, the Open Door Zoo, call them the Zoo, has listed, anything else they should be aware of? And if you all have questions or comments that you want to add, because then just let us know.
Repairs are garbage.
okay, I didn't want to say that. I'm glad your attorney said
Right. Like, I don't want to be undiplomatic here, but it's, and I'm only speaking for the biggest player in the market. or about them, because I don't know about Zillow's repairs. But if you want repairs, just ask for money, because I mean it's a consistent thing. It's not like just I've had one bad experience or two. It is a consistent thing that when you go back to check on repairs, that they are either just not done at all or they're done poorly.
That is across the board.
Across the
Nationally,
board.
I'm actually seeing
Yeah,
people
like,
say that.
I mean, and I strongly advocate this in literally every transaction, not even specific to iBuyers. Ask for money. Just always ask for money. It creates less stress, and you have now taken away a later conflict point for the transaction. Because if you ask for repairs, now you have to go and make sure they're done, and you're creating a conflict point.
So let's think about this from an agent point of view. I'm the agent. You, my buyer, want to buy a house listed by an iBuyer.
Mhm.
We get it inspected because we still have a due diligence period. But I'm going in and I need to tell you, look, we're going to get it inspected. We're going to know what's wrong. But it's in our best interest probably to just say, hey, how about a repair credit and for that? And then you all please use the agreement to amend the contract and not the due diligence repair request, but different lesson for another day. I need to prepare my buyer for the fact that, look, you're probably not going to get these repairs, or it's better off if we just get you some money instead of looking for it to be done.
While I wouldn't make that a blanket statement, and I don't think Chris made it a blanket statement, I think probably from what I've seen, and this has been empirical evidence. I mean, agents have brought it to me and said these are the problems that we're having, and they're mostly tied to repairs. But I would also caution the buyer, we need to have this worked out sooner rather than later. You do not want to push this up till the last minute.
Right.
If you have negotiated repairs in the due diligence period, do not assume that they are going to be done by closing. You're going to have to
double check. We'll get
double
that
check. And
second inspection.
absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Diana has said these iBuyer type programs, do they have to provide an RPD and an RPODS and a MOG? They are not exempt. So first of all, RPODS is the Residential Property Owners Association Disclosure Statement. And then the MOG is the Mineral Oil and Gas Rights Disclosure. So Chris, do they have to provide it?
I know of no exemption of why they would not.
You know the exemption?
There is no exemption. And they do, I believe. I think every contract I've ever seen.
I've seen it in every one as well. Yeah. And weirdly enough, I think in some of them, they've actually answered the questions. In other words, it was not just no representation.
Right, which is weird.
All the way down. Yeah.
Well, so now go off topic for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You said they actually answered the questions, and that's weird.
Right.
And I just want to say this, as long as we have you on camera, please, as agents, do not freak out, especially newer agents, if a seller checks no representation down the line. I don't know why people do that, but they do. And so since that came out of his mouth naturally, would you agree that that's not always a huge red flag?
It's not always a huge red flag, depending on the seller. Like if it's a seller that's lived in the house for years, I mean, I would well, at least do a good inspection, because it would be weird for them to mark no representation all the way down. But it's not uncommon. Like there's no reason for Open Door to be answering any of those questions. They've never lived in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no obligation. Some people are just going to choose that because there's no obligation to answer those questions, yes or no. They can mark no representation. And there's going to be a lot of people with that personality. They're going to be like, I'm marking no representation on everything, because it creates less liability, and they may not be trying to hide anything, but it's not necessarily something that they're.
Gotcha. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's a thing. Lisa, hi Lisa. Lisa Beth said buyers can also ask for a home warranty. Yes, that is definitely something they can do.
I love it, Lisa. Like Lisa's like, hey,
home warranty.
don't forget about me.
I'm going to say, speaking of the buying side, Open Door offered my client a different buying price to use their attorney instead of Chris Mann. That would save them over $500. My buyer went with their attorney because she needed the money.
And you can always push back on that. I mean, you can't always win that, but you can always push back and say, nope, I still want the same amount, but we're using my attorney. And I mean, this is actually the first I've heard that, and that's cool to at least hear him like tell us that has happened. So, but always push back if you can, if you want. Like again, I'm not saying you have to use me or whatever or any other attorney, but you can always push back.
Okay, so anything else from the buyer's point of view that we need to be careful of? Or I mean, because different conversation, but this whole idea that people can get into houses without having an agent, I personally wonder about the safety of that one, but I mean, it's very clear that now clients don't need us to get in houses. Anything else?
You know what, again, having to give the credit to what they're doing with this iBuyer space is they are getting out there in front of our clients.
Yeah.
We need to be in front of our clients, in front of our database, explaining to them why they need an agent. They can go buy it with that one company we mentioned that is really just doing a glorified for sale by owner. In these, the buyers can get in without agents in some cases. So it's our job to explain to them what benefit we can be. Sure, I know that they would love it if they could cut out the buyer agent side of the transaction. There's no doubt that that's part of what their model is. But that's our job to explain what we have value.
When you do when there's just one agent in the transaction, whether it's a FSBO or whatever,
Right.
how, I mean, does it go more smoothly when there are two agents or there's an agent? And
Yeah, like anytime. So anytime we have a for sale by owner, because we're not going to get an unrepresented buyer in our office most of the time that's got a listing agent. That's not a thing that is particularly common. Almost always it's going to be a buyer's agent on a for sale by owner. And those are often very difficult, and they're very difficult for the agent on the buyer's side because all of the things that sort of work in the process of, we send out this information, you send it back. We have to get you scheduled to sign a deed and lien waiver and all the other seller docs and all that stuff. For a seller who's unrepresented, who also clearly didn't want to pay a commission to begin with, all of that stuff is a challenge for our office. And if it's two unrepresented people, we actually don't do it as an office.
okay,
I mean, with some exception, if there's some particular reason we're doing it, we will. But if it's just somebody who Googled, found us, or whatever, because they don't want to pay us for being the agent, because that's basically what we are at that point. And by the end of that transaction, though, that buyer and that seller are going to try to kill each other without fail, because there's no agent in the middle to make things move smoothly. So by the end, buyer and seller want to murder each other.
Okay. So if we changing topics there, that was not a smooth transition. Sorry, guys. If I'm
Can I bring this up real quickly? Kelly had just chimed in, and she's had a situation where they worked on the buyer side as well, and certainly they offered a rebate, a credit for using their lender, and certainly they are. There's no doubt there's going to be pressure on our margins, but there's also going to be pressure on our vendor groups as well. We need to make sure our vendor partners that we're all working together, we can put together some substantially attractive packages if we work together with our vendor partners.
So basically, we need to make sure we're doing what other companies are doing. So these iBuying companies are willing to buy or have the house as a loss leader because they've got these other associated companies that they're making money off of. Yeah. Not saying we should make money off of our vendors, but we need to offer the whole package and say, you don't have to go to Zillow as a one-stop shop. You can come to me and I can be your one-stop shop. I have these people that I trust. I know if you go with Chris Mann and as an attorney, he's going to do a great job. I know that, I've got these different inspectors. I've worked with them and they're awesome. You don't have to use them, but I can tell you that this is good, substantive people, I guess. Yeah,
it's hard for new agents coming in. I don't think they always understand vendor partnership relationships. And sure, the vendors do want the business. I mean, that's why they are there. But it's so much easier if you can walk right down the hall, or if you can pick up the phone and have somebody on speed dial and say, what can we do? Here's what we're competing with. Can you help me out? Can you make it quicker? Can you give us a break on this? Is there something that you can share with me? And these partner relationships, they're not to make the office money, even though sometimes we have that set up. But having said that, they're there so that we have literally partners that we're working with on a daily basis.
Okay. So if I'm an agent and I'm looking for listings, what do you think I should know, or besides understanding, what can I do to better my business or to Do you get what I'm saying?
Did we switch to the listing side? Is that
Yes,
what
we
you're
are
telling me?
switching
Okay.
to the listing side.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. You know,
Okay.
like squirrel.
This is actually where I'm most excited about.
Okay.
Because now, I mentioned this earlier, but we can talk about it now. I go in to meet with a seller. If I have these tools, if I have these relationships, there is nothing that's off the table. Literally every potential seller should talk to me. Why? Because I know what's going on in the iBuyer space. I know what's going on in the full service space. I made a note earlier when I was reading somebody's comment. Think about the markets that are not being served by these iBuyers. We're talking about iBuyers today, so I'll go outside of that. There may be someone out there that's naive. They think that they're going to, well, I have a dump of a house. I'm just going to sell it to Open Door. No, you're not. Open Door is not buying that house, okay? But what if I had a repair, a touch-up crew at my disposal where I could call it in and I could say, Candace, your house needs work. But if it had work, you could sell it at retail rather than having to dump it, okay? And if I have that lined up, I can do that service. There's also niches in the market that the iBuyers are not into. They're not looking a lot at things under, what, 200?
Yeah, their sweet spot is between 200, I think, and 400. So that is where they've done the math and they said if it's over 400, that's not a market we're into. We want these houses that we know are flying.
Yeah, it has to fit into their algorithm for it to make sense. New homes, land, there are all types of niches out there that they're not even a player.
I think it's
Historic homes, like
Yeah,
if you have
absolutely.
a super old house in Oakwood.
so. I think it's being, to me, if somebody said, "What should I do?" You got to know the business.
Mhm.
So like AVM, and I see that word thrown around. I had somebody ask me, "Well, what is an AVM?" Well, that's an automated valuation model. So they're just putting the house into the computer, and then it says, "Boom, this is what it's worth."
Right.
If a seller asks you that question, you need to be able to answer it. Like you have to.
If they throw out an acronym that you don't know, that's going to hurt your credibility.
That's a good point.
And I think be willing to be open about it. Don't just keep it as an elephant in the room. It's kind of like the Zestimate. For years, people go, "Oh, I don't like Zillow, blah, blah, blah." But now you just go ahead and you talk about it. Look, I realize that you may have looked at Open Door. You may have looked at Redfin or Zillow or whatever these things are. Let's talk about what you need to know no matter what you decide, because I'm your advisor.
Yeah.
I want to be here to help you. And that's why I have this team of people that I, can recommend you work with. I know that these people are going to have your best interests. So.
Yeah. And an AVM has a hard time taking into consideration strategic things about the house, the strategic location within a neighborhood near the pool or the upgrades that it has. So that's where we can go in and we can add our value. And there's another thing that the iBuyers absolutely don't have, and that's the possibility of getting into the multiple offer situation. So their AVM says you're worth 300. Well, let me tell you something. 300 in Apex is going to sell for 318. So that you take away all possibilities of that by going with the iBuyer. I'm not scared of it. I'll let you know that it's available. But did you really consider this?
Chad says they won't make me an offer because I have over an acre lot.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize that.
Point,
Thanks, Chad.
One thing I think if you're going into a listing appointment is to not be dismissive with your prospective client about an iBuyer. I don't know who these people were, but I went to a real estate event recently, and I could hear from people behind me who I couldn't necessarily see, just sort of being disdainful about it. And sort of in a way being disdainful about the people who would use them. And your client will they're not like your prospective client in an interview for a listing agreement or a listing appointment is not going to like that. I can tell you as somebody that would be on that end of it, you have to be positive about what you provide. And if you go into a listing appointment with sort of like, nobody should use those because it's stupid, like that sort of attitude, I don't think it's going to work for a prospective seller.
Yeah. I get it that a year ago, where agents were, you're always sensitive about new competition coming into the market, and there wasn't a great understanding of the iBuyers at that point, but I think you're exactly right. Today, and Kenny Klaus actually told a great story in his video, and he talked about why when you go to a casino, they give you poker chips instead of cash. You have an emotional attachment to cash, but you don't own chips.
That's right.
And so the way he said that he related that to our industry is that think about how much equity someone has grown over the past 3 years. They may have grown $85,000. If they give away 15 grand, that was house money anyway.
Right.
So don't be disdainful. They have a goal that they're trying to accomplish. Their goal doesn't have to be the same as my goal.
I know there's a bit of a lag here, so I want to make sure that I say, if you all have any questions that you want us to try to get the answers for, or you want to add, just go ahead and do that so that we get it before the end of the broadcast. Anything else we want to add?
I mean, they're not going anywhere. These folks are not going anywhere. They're going to get a little bit better at it as they go. And just like anything else, this is an opportunity for agents to change their value proposition. Like that is,
you got to know
with
what you're
every
offering.
advance, with every change, you have to look at your business and say, what do I need to do to show my value to?
I think it just reminds us that we have to keep growing and educating ourselves as agents. Like you can't just do what you've been doing for the last 5 years and think it's going to work.
And I know
You
that's
gotta get
annoying
yourself.
because I can appreciate our desire to just keep running our business the way we always did, but we can't.
Yeah, and let's admit it. Since the last crash, a couple of slow years after that, to some extent we've been a little bit spoiled in the last several years. I used to say when I started years ago that I could print 10 business cards, go hand them out, and I'd sell 3 houses because the market was that good. And we came through a market that was that good. Well, you mentioned it earlier. Why do we have this competition here? We're a great market. Great markets attract good competition, and these guys are good. There's no doubt they've done their homework. Their technology is awesome. So yeah, how do we adapt?
We have to adapt. I would definitely say if you're interested in learning more, we mentioned Kenny Kloss, and y'all, he has a Facebook group, which I love being on. It's called iBuyer Hub. So it's a private group. You have to ask to join, but it's just people talking about the iBuyer thing. It's just Facebook group. And Kenny has also done the iReal Estate Pro, which is a designation dealing with iBuyers, which I've not taken yet, clearly. Kenny, if you're watching, loved your presentation you did the other day, but I think that would be a great thing just to learn about. And then Mike Del Preet that I mentioned before, he did the Inman. He did a great, we watched it the other day, a great 20-minute segment on iBuying and the market and what it looks like. He is the authority on that. So love it. There's also the iBuyer map, which he went through and said, okay, where are these iBuyer markets at? Because one of the things that Mike Del Preet said was, as of June 2019, the iBuyers, or it was Open Door, wasn't it Open Door, has already done as much business in the first 6 months of 2019 as they did in all of 2018. They are going to double, if not more, their business. They are coming. And are we ready? Do you know what that means for us? I mean, for your business.
Yeah. I want to go back to the iBuyer Hub just real quickly to say something. And again, this goes back to what Chris said just a few minutes ago. Don't be sensitive. Don't be dismissive. The iBuyer Hub, they have some very high level conversations on there. Nobody's getting on there griping and moaning about it. Yeah. They're talking about how we can use this, how we can leverage this in best interest of not just ourselves, but also our clients as well. Because that's the conversation. That's the fiduciary conversation, right?
That is fiduciary. Anything else we want to add?
I think we covered a lot of it.
We did, and I would really love to take you up on the offer. If I arrange it, you will put together a class.
Sure.
Or we'll just get together and just kind of talk about.
We can figure out what the structure will be.
Yeah, talk about what do you do? What are some scripts? What are some responses? What does this look like in our market? Right?
Absolutely.
Chris, you mentioned CE was coming up. Do you have any interesting classes that you'll be teaching soon?
Let's see, what classes do I have? Certainly, we're going to start off with the update. And if any builders are listening right now, we have a builder incentive program that we'll go to and teach in-house in their offices, and they can invite agents in. I'm working on a class right now that what I've learned as my time as a BIC, that will be kind of a top 10 class of mistakes that I have seen come across my desk. So all of this should be coming out in the fourth quarter.
You got anything you're sponsoring that's going to be awesome? besides your party?
Besides, I'm sure in another class we'll talk about it. We don't have a date yet for that, but it'll be in January. I don't know that there's anything generically like real estate wide that we're sponsoring right now next couple months. But the party's coming.
Yay.
The party's coming.
I know.
If you actually know of a good venue that can fit 400 or 500 people, that also has food and a bar, by all means talk to me, because that's the challenging part of throwing that party.
How about my backyard so I don't have to drive home?
That's, you've got a big backyard.
Somebody asked, please spell Mike's last name. I'd love to learn more. I do believe it is Del, P as in Paul, R as in Robert, E, T as in Tom, E. But if you do a search on Inman for the last conference, you'll see his thing. But Mike Del Preet is there. Oh, I was talking about classes. I have you are sponsoring things. You're sponsoring by the way, a negotiating class. We're doing a how to negotiate. I'm doing a pricing specialist class. And thank you, you're sponsoring that as well. Yay!
I find these things out now.
Yeah, all sorts of classes. And I usually, post-licensing, extra classes. Y'all just keep learning. I mean, being a teacher, I love to teach, but doing the research and learning more about this was awesome. Like, I loved digging in and figuring out. And now I'm going to love manipulating this data and working as a group to say, okay, how do we take it and how do we help you make your businesses better? I don't know if we can get a CE out of this, but I would love to try. I just want to be able to help agents because I don't want to see us disappear.
Yeah, and on that note, obviously, I'm passionate about education as well, but it's sometimes tough for new agents coming in, and there's so much that can be offered. I always think in terms of need to know. What do I need to know now? Today's topic, you need to know about iBuyers if you're going to be competing against the best in the industry. So that's a place that you can go and you can study, and then similar things as well. Don't try to learn it all at one time. We're going to be here. Instructors are going to be here. There's some very, very good instructors that they can go to.
Obviously, we have the best instructor ever.
Thank you.
I mean, I think all of us, if any of you all ever have any questions or things like that, they can always go to your page because you always do your Thursday.
The midweek real estate class with Chris.
The midweek real estate class with Chris, which I think should be
Thank you for that, by the way, Chris.
that is really, and that's what we're going to kind of focus on. And you've got stuff on your page. I usually have stuff on my business page, not my personal page. Lord only knows what you're going to find on there. Look at my business page. Anything else? It's right about that time. Oh, we have some new comments. Let's see.
Stay online
Great information. Yeah, great session. Yeah, we'll stay on a little bit longer. I guess you all get to, because there's that lag there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of lag. So we're not just going to leave you hanging. If you think you are interested in coming to a lunch and learn or just a, what do you call it? A table, what's that word I'm looking for? A table talk on iBuyers and how do we do this with our business and just kind of really digging into what this can mean for your business, or what would be the best way to do this? I'll create an event. I'll pick a date. I'll create an event. I'll also, and we'll do it that way. And it won't be Ruth's Chris. And just thank you, Chris, for everything that you sponsor. I appreciate it, but it's all
and for the space.
There's my French teacher in high school when she would say, does anybody have an answer to a question? And nobody would raise their hand. She'd say volunteer or become a victim. And I am a victim.
Kind of like at that one auction.
Yes.
I got them at an auction too, but it worked. It worked.
All right, wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Well, we have to give it a couple minutes, and just in case.
Well, I was going to say, can we stay online and answer questions anyway, or do their questions go away?
Well, once we.
They'll come in the comments.
Yeah, they'll come in the comments, and I guess we could do it.
We're always here.
Yeah, we're always here, guys. Thanks, you.
Guys.
Next month it's going to be the. What did we say it was going to be?
I don't know what you're saying.
It'll be around the theme of the top 10.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
the things that we see that people are doing wrong.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. From an attorney and instructor and
kind of point of view. And if you all have suggestions on topics, we'd love to get those questions, comments, telling us how much you love us. We always accept that too. I don't know. Hey, what? Me. I don't know about two of you. Okay, guys, it's been great. Thank you so much. Oh wait, we do have 2 new comments. people finding a willing victim. Oh, see, Heather says she wants to be in for the mastermind. All right, we're out. Y'all need to feed me. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.